Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our newest Tools for Life webinar. Today, we are looking at adaptive gaming, which is a hot topic right now in the assistive technology world. So we're very excited for everyone to join us today. My name is Tori Adamson, and I am the outreach specialist here at Tools for Life, and I'll be moderating our webinar today. Just have a couple of housekeeping things before we jump in. Microphone rights have been disabled for everyone who is attending, just because we want to ensure that everything runs smoothly and there are no interruptions. There also is no chat function here in this webinar room, but there is a Q&A option. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A button. It's on your toolbar within the Zoom room. Also, we are very excited to have a live captionist with us today. So I want to thank Sky for providing our live captions today. And also, this is being recorded. So for those who are not able to attend our live broadcast, or for anyone who is joining today who would like to view it later, we will have this on the Tools for Life webinar archive page within the next week or so. And with that, I am going to toss it over to our presenters, Hunter McFerrin and Rachel Scarborough, to kick us off. So Hunter and Rachel, go right ahead.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys for joining in. We're really excited to have you all here to join us on this exciting topic. Adaptive gaming is actually something that's been part of the Tools for Life library for quite a few years now. It was started by a former Tools for Life team member, Ben Jacobs. And when Rachel and I started just a little under 2 years ago, we really saw the potential and wanted to continue to grow in that area as far as our knowledge and equipment. And we've really done a lot over the past year. We've established a partnership with a national charity, Able Gamers. We've really expanded the variety of equipment in our lab and also our knowledge on this topic. So we're happy to be here today to kind of share some of what we've learned. But like Tori mentioned, I'm the lab and acquisition services manager here at Tools for Life. As far as my background with gaming goes, I've actually been kind of around video gaming my whole life. My dad loved video gaming. He worked in restaurants and just had really long days, and it was a great way for him to decompress and just spend some time with his kids. So I had a little bit of exposure throughout my childhood. Nowadays, I love games that are a puzzle or a challenge, anything with a story. And it's just really a great way to kind of get my mind off things at the end of the day. But I'll go ahead and pass it along to Rachel to introduce herself.
Yeah, so I'm Rachel. I'm an occupational therapist here at Tools for Life, and I've also been kind of focusing on some of the gaming stuff that we've got going on. I think Hunter kind of touched on this, but one thing that I like to emphasize is that gaming, I mean, there's a game out there for everyone, and that can be very freeing. That can also feel very overwhelming for some people who are not self-identified gamers. And so I think one thing that I just want to put out there is that everybody's learning. You don't have to play a certain type of game to be called a gamer. You know, it can be a lot more casual. It can be cozy games, and you can still be a gamer. And just to explore what's out there, you might be surprised what you find. And about the intimidation, it feels like there's a lot to learn, and there definitely is. We are both learning too, and everyone who's playing games is learning, because it is things are always changing. New games, new systems are always coming out. So I would say just don't feel too intimidated, and just try and explore some things. And hopefully the information that we present today will make you feel a little bit more comfortable with getting started, no matter where you are in your gaming journey. And my favorite types of games are also tend to be the more cozy, casual games. I grew up playing like the Animal Crossing games from the GameCube version up till the Switch that I think got a lot of us through the pandemic. Pokemon games, those types of things. And then I really enjoy like puzzle strategy games and music games. So you can go to the next slide.
All right, just to give you all a quick overview of some of the topics we're going to cover today, we're going to start with major benefits and reasons for video gaming. So thinking about, why is gaming important? What benefits are there outside of just having fun, which might be the most important, but there are lots of other benefits out there. We're also going to cover some of the common gaming systems and popular genres and titles, go over some of the adaptive controllers and different softwares and features we have available in our library. And then we're also going to touch on some factors that we like to consider when supporting individuals who reach out to our program. And we'll discuss with you all some further resources that are available both in the state of Georgia, but also at the national level. All right, so to start off, I just want to ask a general question of you guys. Why is gaming important to you? This doesn't have to be a video game specifically. It could be, board games or anything you play with your friends. But just take a moment. I know you don't have chat access, but you can think about it or say it out loud. Why is gaming and recreation really important to you? And I'll just share a little bit, for me, I think gaming is really something that can help keep my mind occupied. I kind of attribute it to being a millennial. I'm a little bit of a digital nomad. And I think part of that is just, I always want to be engaged in something, constantly thinking or active. So it can be a great outlet for me just to kind of distract and calm down at the end of the day. But for some individuals, it can also be a great way of connecting with others. I know I mentioned board games. I, will frequently have nights where friends come over and we just kind of sit around and enjoy a board game or something together. There even are a lot of opportunities to connect online nowadays. A lot of video games are online, and there are even digital communities on platforms like Twitch and Discord, where people can really just build that sense of community, which I think is incredibly important for a lot of people in the disability community. Gaming can also be a great way of just distracting yourself. Maybe if you've had an acute injury or if you've just had like a really long day, it can be a great way to be a distraction, kind of get out of that moment in time. For some individuals, it can also be a great way of building skills. So if you look at just a standard controller, there's so many little buttons and joysticks and things you have to maneuver and press. For some students in particular, that can be a great way to help support their fine motor abilities. We'll kind of talk a little bit later, but if someone is using a specific switch or joystick to access other devices, this can be a great way to kind of build on those skills and their ability to use those devices. Games can also be a great outlet of creative expression. There are so many games nowadays where, just building is a great component of it. Minecraft is a great example of this. You can build whatever kind of house you want. You can build things for animals. Like the list really goes on. So there are so many creative ways to get involved with games. It can also just be an enjoyable experience. A lot of games also have universal appeal. It's a great way to build a community and friends. And it can be enabling, just think about anything that you've wanted to do in your life that you haven't had a chance to. Maybe it's flying a plane, diving deep in the ocean. There's really something out there, like Rachel said, for everybody. So there are just so many opportunities to explore with gaming. We can go to the next slide. Some quick statistics for you guys. It's estimated that there may be up to 3 billion gamers worldwide by 2029. An estimated 20 to 30% of those gamers are thought to have a disability. And it's also said that 45% of individuals with disabilities play video games. So that's a pretty significant percentage. The adaptive controllers market was valued at 170 million in 2019. And that's expected to reach 400 million by 2025, which is really encouraging in my view. There weren't many adaptive controllers out there in 2019, but we're seeing it's becoming more of a trend nowadays. PlayStation actually just released their own adaptive controller last year. So the market seems to be growing, and there's just more and more options out there, which I think is great. It may kind of help reduce the prices for some individuals, but it's also just showing that the disability community is getting more engaged and excited and interested in this. And really the options out there available to them are growing. Last, according to one study, over 90% of gamers with a disability have reported that adaptive gaming has had a strong positive influence over their quality of life. So that's just another encouraging statistic. It really does seem like gaming is giving a lot of the disability community it's just something fun and exciting to get engaged with. So kind of going along with some of the benefits of gaming, there are also so many ways that gaming can support achievement outside of, just recreation and the activity itself. Think about the social skills that could be built with playing video games, just learning how to work with a team, collaborate with others, develop friendships and common interests. There are so many great ways that we can build social skills into gaming. Even emotional regulation. A lot of games require a lot of patience, and there's a fine balance there. You may not want to give a student or an individual a game that they're going to be really frustrated with off the bat, but it can be a great way of working on those emotional regulation skills and just learning to kind of be patient and take learning as it comes. We kind of also mentioned some of the fine motor skills that can be developed. Cognitive abilities, there's so many games that require just planning, paying attention to so many things. Even just thinking about something as simple as a racing game, you've got to control multiple triggers on the controller. You need to be thinking about what's in front of you, the turns coming up, if there are obstacles in your way. So there's so many different, executive functioning skills and other attention-related skills you can build playing video games. We mentioned a little bit about proficiency with AT, the equipment you're using to access a computer or your communication device. A lot of those can be built into the adaptive controllers we're going to be talking about. And it's also just a great way of building additional leisure interests. So just thinking about ways to get more involved with friends, adding, just having another thing to do at the end of the day. There's so many great benefits. And a lot of this is not something that can be practiced just in the context of video gaming. You can also see how these skills can kind of improve educational performance. It may be a way to build upon independent living skills and even job prospects for some students and individuals. All right, we can go to the next slide. So from here, we're going to kind of give you guys a little bit of an overview of some of the gaming systems and common games out there. Just a basic overview, you'll see in the bottom left corner here, that's an example of an Xbox console. In the middle, we have a Nintendo Switch, and on the right-hand side, the white console there is the PlayStation 5. So these are kind of some of the most popular ways of gaming today, using these systems to play different games and software. But you can also play games on your computer. There are mobile apps that you can play on your phone and tablets. And there are even virtual reality options like the MetaQuest and PlayStation VR. So those are kind of systems where you put on a headset and you can kind of just get really immersed in the world. It's kind of cool. But as you can see, there are a lot of different ways you can get started with gaming. All right, next slide. Methods of playing games. So you'll notice with movies and TV shows, a lot of them have really shifted towards digital downloads and streaming nowadays. The same thing's kind of happening with gaming. We're kind of getting out of the era of playing up with game discs and cartridges. So nowadays, those options do still exist, but you can also download games digitally off platforms like Steam, the PlayStation Store, Microsoft Store, and there are even subscription options. So just like you may sign up for Netflix or Hulu to access your favorite shows, Xbox and PlayStation have similar subscription models nowadays. So you can subscribe to them and then just get access to a variety of games you may be interested in playing. And that might be a great option for somebody who isn't really sure about the type of game they may want to play, but just wants kind of a library to get started. All right, we can go to the next slide. And this slide, there's a lot of text on here, but we really just kind of wanted to give you an idea of just the variety of games out there for people. So, if you're interested, or if your client or loved one is interested in sports, there's a game out there for them. If they're interested in something more that has like a story, or just characters you can develop and explore, you might look at something like an RPG. If you're more action oriented, maybe something like an action adventure game or a shooter might be more to your liking. There's really just so much out there nowadays. There are cozy games where you just kind of sit back and relax and enjoy. You don't have to push too many buttons. May not be super complicated. But there's just a great variety out there. All right, next slide. Now we're going to talk with you guys a little bit about the different kinds of controllers we have available in our library, starting with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. The reason we're starting with this one is it's one of the more mainstream controllers that was first developed back in, I believe, around the 2017 timeframe. So you'll see the image on the right. This is a customizable controller that has 19 3.5 millimeter ports that you can remap to any kind of switch or joystick you might have available. So if you just look at the controller at face value, you see the two big buttons there. Those are a good way to kind of navigate menus and stuff, but the real highlight here is the back of the controller, which you can kind of see a few things plugged into the ports. But like I mentioned, there are 19 of those. So there's just such a variety of switches, buttons. It could be a foot switch, a trigger, something that you can pinch or just press with your palm. There are so many different ways that you can customize this controller and map out the different buttons. And you may think, well, if you want access to all 19 buttons, that's going to be a lot of switches. But the thing that we kind of consider is not every game needs access to every single button on the controller. So like for a racing game, maybe you just need a trigger for the gas, and a joystick to control the steering. This is a great way to adapt to that. And it's a great way just to get started with adaptive gaming. Some neat features about it: it can be used by itself, but you can also use an Xbox feature called Copilot, not to be mistaken with the AI version. I'm not really sure why they named the things the same, but Copilot is an exclusive feature on the Xbox where you can have one person playing with a standard controller, and then another person could be helping out with the adaptive controller here. So that way you could have two people controlling like the same car or the same character, and they both could have different duties. So maybe one person's pressing the gas on the controller, and the other person is using an adapted joystick to steer. Now, you could also have one individual use the controller and the adapted controller at the same time. So maybe they're more comfortable using their left hand, but they need some support like a switch or a joystick to help out with their right hand. And that way you could have access to a standard controller with your left hand, but then be using adapted controls with your right hand. Overall, this is really a smaller learning curves compared to some of the other options out there, but it's important to state this may not suit everybody's needs. So If you're really interested in playing a complex game that uses the majority of a controller, we may want to look at something more complex that Rachel's going to talk about in a little bit. But with that, we can go on to the next slide. And here we're just going to give you guys a minute to listen in on a video that Xbox has developed to explain the adaptive controller in a little more depth.
The worst thing ever invented, putting on shoes. The cell phones that I use, these are the sorts of things that we don't think about until we have to. And I think about them every day. Yeah! I have cerebral palsy on my entire right side. This side of the controller is fine. This side doesn't happen. As game platforms have gotten more sophisticated, the controllers have gotten more sophisticated, and it started to get really frustrating.
We designed the Xbox Adaptive Controller through feedback from the accessibility community.
The Xbox Adaptive Controller is really easy. You just plug it in, and then you can plug in various other devices. I can make it work for me the way it has to.
With the Xbox Adaptive Controller, a gamer can game with one hand and one foot, or one hand and their shoulder, or even one foot and their chin.
And I can change it from game to game.
Good, ready? Forward, squeeze tall. There it is.
Craig Hospital is a facility for patients who've either had a spinal cord injury or a traumatic brain injury, and it's a place for their rehab.
Yes. We're here for game night, and we're helping new patients getting back into gaming again. Is that the D-pad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our role as occupational therapists is to get people back to doing. When the Xbox Adaptive Controller came along, it acted like an Xbox controller and it just worked.
Uh-oh, over there.
Ooh. On the standard Xbox controller, it's just hard to press the buttons because can't really put pressure through my hands. But then with the adaptive controller, I can use like larger joysticks, larger buttons that are easier to press and reach.
Corey and his brother Zachary are twins. Before Corey's injury, Zachary had gamed with him regularly, and that was the way that they related to each other as siblings.
Who do you love playing Xbox with here at Craig Hospital?
Zach.
The Xbox Adaptive Controller and the co-pilot feature allowed them again to play games together. So there's a huge social component to it.
You got that? Yes, yes. They can play any game that they want. I see the confidence just burst out of them.
Alrighty, so that was just a little bit of an overview of the Xbox Adaptive Controller, but I'm going to pass it along to Rachel to give you a little bit of an overview of some other equipment we have available.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that video. I think it does a great job showing like all the different use cases that can enable somebody to game, whether that's playing a single player game, playing against other like friends or family or people online, or playing alongside them with the co-pilot feature. And just really cool to see the different configurations that people have come up with. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about something called the quad stick. This is another adaptive controller. The quad stick can be used on most of the mainstream consoles as well as like a PC. And it is designed to be used completely with your mouth and head. And so the way that it works is it's got 4 sip and puff switches that are on the front of the controller. So the little tubes that you can see in that image are the sip and puff switches. And if you're not familiar with a sip and puff, it detects changes in pressure. So as if you were sucking into a straw or blowing into a straw, it can detect those pressure changes. And you would map those to different keyboard strokes or button presses in a game. So it's got 4 of those. You can do combinations like the left 2, the right 2, all 3. You can also do a hard sip and a hard puff. There's a lot of customization available. The main part also is a joystick. So if you're able to move your head and neck around, you can control a joystick that way. And then there's a small switch underneath the sip and puff switches that you can use your lip or your tongue to kind of, or your chin to press that button as another control. So This one is really cool to see, somebody with a high level spinal cord injury, or who may not have very good control of their body. If they're able to still use their neck and their mouth, they can still play games. And there's a lot of potential for high level gaming, playing games that require really quick reactions and a lot of different functions. With that, the upside of all of that customization is it's a lot harder to get started, is what I found. Because there are so many options that it's easy to get a little bit overwhelmed. But we've got a video. Tori, if you want to go ahead and go to the next, or go ahead and play that video and I'll kind of talk over it a little bit. This one doesn't have any dialogue, it's just music. But this is an example of a player. His name is Robert, and he had a high level cervical spinal cord injury. And so then he wanted to get back into gaming, and you can see he's clearly practiced a lot because he's doing a lot better than I would do with my hands at this game. And, it's kind of remapping all of your motor planning, and you don't have that muscle memory until you practice with it. But you can see that he is moving really quickly between the different sip and puff switches. He's moving his head around accurately to target, and he's playing, it's got kind of a montage of different games, but they're primarily like action adventure type games, combat scenes, he's needing to react very quickly to these games in order to play effectively. So I think it's really cool. A lot of folks who may have a pretty significant motor disability may think like there's nothing that there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And seeing folks like Robert, or there's another guy named Rocky, his handle is Rocky No Hands. And just seeing what they're able to do with the quad stick is really cool. There's also a pretty active community online of quad stick users who help each other out to kind of find solutions and share what had worked for them. So we can kind of move on. I think that gives a good visual of how the quad stick can work. And we're going to just talk about a few other adaptive controllers here. So on the left-hand side of the slide, we've got an Evil PS5 controller that's adapted for use with one hand. So this is maybe an alternative to the Copilot feature. What they've done is, so say that you don't have access to, the left side of the controller, you're going to need a joystick, you're going to need the D-pad potentially, and then there's the trigger buttons that are at the top of the controller that are going to be harder to reach for somebody who's not using their left hand to game. So what they've done is they've added these paddles to the back of like the grip of the standard controller. So with your right hand, you're usually using your thumb, maybe your index and middle finger to press those triggers, but your pinky finger and ring finger aren't really doing a whole lot other than gripping the controller. So what they've done is remap those other trigger buttons to the back of that handle, that grip, so that you can use your ring and pinky fingers to press those buttons. And then it's got a joystick that is it's connected with a wire where you can position that joystick in a different spot to maybe use your elbow, maybe use your foot or a knee or another body part to use that joystick. In the middle image is another joystick option that you can use with your feet, and it's called 3D Rudder. It was designed actually not really for a disability audience, but more for use in virtual reality, so that you can be more immersed in a game by rotating around with your feet, or tilting from side to side or forward and back to move around. But people in the disability community saw that that could be really helpful for them, giving them another way to access a joystick and move around in a game. And then on the right-hand side is that PlayStation Access controller, and that's what Hunter mentioned earlier. This came out at the end of last year, and it's PlayStation's take on an adaptive controller. So you'll see it's got kind of a round shape. And the idea is that you can sort of place your hand in the center and then use your fingers and the palm of your hand or the heel of your hand to hit the buttons around. Those keycaps are also very customizable and swappable. So they're just like little magnets that you can pop on and off to remap your controller. So if it's just for a particular game or for all of your setups, you can have different configurations there. And it's got another larger joystick that's attached to it. So it also gives you the ability to attach, it's not 19 switches, but you can do 4 additional switches with that controller. And then it also lets you set up different profiles depending on the game that you're using, doing things like adjusting the sensitivity of your joystick and other sorts of customization options. So there's a lot out there just for kind of the hardware, and we haven't even talked about the software. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of the settings and features that you can also use. Some things to know about. So Xbox, we've noticed, has really kind of paved the way, I think, for accessibility in gaming. PlayStation is kind of trying to keep up with them. And then Nintendo is not doing a whole lot from what I've seen, to be honest. But one thing that Microsoft did was publish a set of best practices for accessibility. And so they've created these accessibility guidelines that are published for game developers to use as they're creating games, kind of giving them some guardrails and letting them know what to consider. I think a lot of developers may not know what the needs are or exactly the best practice for how to meet those needs. So having those guidelines available is very helpful. And then it also translates into a database where folks looking for certain features can go through and filter games based on what accessibility features they need. So if you know what kind of features you need, that is a great place to look. And we'll share a couple other resources toward the end here. On the consoles themselves, there are a bunch of different features. So for example, this is on PlayStation, and Microsoft has similar features as well, being able to enable a screen reader so that text on the screen can be read aloud for somebody, being able to zoom, adjust things like color contrast, using voice commands to control the console is an option, as well as like dictating. And then there's also third-party solutions to consider. So an example here is called iMine. And this is like a mod that you can download and install for free that changes how you use Minecraft. So there's an image on the slide, and the top half of the image, or top 2/3, I'd say, is the regular Minecraft game that you'd be playing. And then toward the bottom is a toolbar that's been designed for use with eye gaze. So somebody who's an eye gaze user can just look at one of the icons on that toolbar to equip the tool that they need, or to move around, or whatever they are wanting to do in the game. And that's just making it a lot simpler for them versus having to look back and forth or try and find another access method. So that is just something that's out there for free, just an example of a third-party software that can help with accessibility. And then we want to feature a few other games that you may have heard about for their accessibility, or maybe you've just heard of them because they were big games that came out. But I think it's just cool to know kind of what some of these big developers are doing. So The Last of Us Part 2 is one that has been highly praised for accessibility. They have over 60 accessibility features for vision, hearing, and motor disabilities. And one thing that's really cool is that it takes you through a guided setup from the start. So as you are setting up, the basic calibrations and settings, it's also asking you about accessibility. So I love that that is just built in from the start. And it also has presets. So you don't have to go through all 60 accessibility features. and do them one by one. If you think, okay, you know, I have low vision, I'm probably going to need several of the vision related configurations, you can just select that preset. And then if you need to fine tune some extra things afterward, you can do that as well, but it's kind of nice to have those presets that are built for different needs. Forza Horizon 5 is a racing game that was also popular and also has a lot of different accessibility features. God of War is another one, and they have these presets again that have some or all configurations. So if you need some of the features or you need all of the features for a particular need, then it's there. And it's won a few different innovation and accessibility awards for all those features. On the slide, there's also an image from a like third-person action adventure game, and it's enabled high contrast. So it's a combat scene, but the player character is kind of highlighted in this blue tone. The enemy character is highlighted in a bright red that's contrasting, and in the background, all of the kind of insignificant details are grayed out, so that the person, whether they have, you know, visual impairment or cognitive needs where it's helpful for them to see very clearly, this is me and this is who I need to fight, giving somebody those options can be really helpful. One other feature that a lot of the games have is like the ability to slow down action. So if you need extra processing time to understand what to do, or you need extra time to you know, have a response by, you know, pressing a button, aiming or shooting, being able to slow those action scenes down can be really helpful for somebody, or turning on things like an auto aim assist or something else to, just to make it a little bit easier for somebody to manage. One last thing on this slide is the game called Veil: Shadow of the Crown. It's a really cool game that was designed by like an indie developer, and it's kind of a medieval fantasy game, and you play as a blind princess who's been sent out. She's got to venture out and I think rescue like her father or something like that. But because the player character is blind, there are almost no visuals in the entire game. So you have to use 3D audio. So if you wear a headset, you can hear which direction things are coming from, and as well as haptic feedback, like vibrations in the controller for you to explore the world that you're in. You've got to navigate around, so you might know I need to go to the river, and you can hear water streaming to your right. So I know that's the way I gotta go. And even having combat scenes, you have to listen for the other person swinging their sword, and you'll hear the metal kind of like swinging, and you have to be able to time your response to parry their attack. So really cool, immersive game that is enjoyable for blind and sighted users. So that is a cool one that Hunter and I got the chance to play a month or so ago, and we had some fun with that, I think. All right, so we're just going to go over some factors and things to consider if you're starting with gaming. This is really relevant whether you have a disability or not. You're going to want to consider each of these factors when you're getting into gaming. So that is going to be first looking at somebody's prior experience with gaming. You know, what are they already accustomed to doing, or what are they hoping to do in the future? What types of games were they playing in the past? You know, that's going to prime them to maybe be more successful in a similar type of game. But maybe they just want to change and try something totally new, and that's fine too. So we're going to be looking also, of course, at somebody's motor abilities as well as their cognitive ability. So the motor skills are going to be the ability to respond and time a response, pressing the correct buttons and aiming and moving accurately, those sorts of things. Cognitive abilities, we're going to be looking at what is their sequencing ability, what is the coordination, how are their visual skills and their visual perceptual skills, as well as auditory. And so not only can they hear, but can they process what they're hearing, and how quickly can they process that? And we're also going to be looking at things like their problem solving, as well as their frustration tolerance. We don't want to give somebody something that is far too challenging and they're not able to be successful. They're going to get frustrated and then they're just going to want to quit. So we definitely want to look at what are the goals, what are they wanting to do, what are they motivated to do, and how motivated are they to do it? And then again, how likely are they to be frustrated if it's too difficult? Alongside that, we're also going to be looking at the demands of the game and the game system. So kind of thinking about the particular game that they've chosen. Does it require a lot of inputs quickly? Does it require, those puzzle solving skills? Like what are the key functions and elements of that game or that game system based on what they want to play? And then also planning for the future. So if somebody has, a progressive condition, we want to factor that into the system that we give them so that they are best set up for long-term success. So if we know that maybe somebody has a motor neurodegenerative type of condition, we may want to start them off working with a quad stick, even if they're capable of using an Xbox adaptive controller for the time being. If we know that's a long-term goal for them, that they really want to continue playing, we might go ahead and start so that they can get as accustomed to that system. So it's really, everything is kind of a case-by-case basis. And all of these factors are going to impact what tools we might try with somebody and how we kind of build up that system as we're able to achieve some success with them. If you can go to the next slide. So this process is kind of a little bit of a reiteration of the previous slide, but this kind of describes what we do when we're working with folks on adaptive gaming. So we start off, getting to know their strengths and their interests, and then our step 2 is kind of how are we going to modify that, whether that's a modified controller, changing the placement or the types of controls that they're using, whether that's doing things on the console or on the PC to adjust settings or difficulty levels, or whether that's something like the co-pilot mode. We start off just getting to know folks and try to work with them at the level that they're at. And we'll talk a little bit at the very end of this about some of the services that we're providing at Tools for Life for people who are in Georgia. So if you can go to the next slide, Tori, we are going to show you guys like a quick example of how we might get started with somebody with some switch access. So we recommend if you don't really know where to start simple. Pick a game that doesn't have a ton of different mechanics to figure out. These tend to be things like racing games. Fall Guys is kind of like a party game as well that is pretty simple just to jump right into and doesn't have a whole lot of game mechanics. And then we recommend from there choosing one mechanic for the person that you're working with to control. So if you give them a switch, like a button, you can put them in charge of, okay, I'm gonna help doing the running and you're gonna jump when it's time. When we are crossing over a ledge, you've got to time that jump. Or I'm going to aim this gun and when it's time to fire, I want you to hit the button to shoot. You could also give somebody a joystick and put them in charge of steering the vehicle, or maybe aiming or running. You kind of get to choose. And then that would enable them to get used to that timing and activating those buttons, and being able to engage, but not being completely overwhelmed with all the different features and controls. And so then you're playing co-pilot mode with them. And as they're kind of getting comfortable, getting familiar with how it works and getting more accurate with their timing, you can then amp it up a little bit And if you started with just a Switch, add a joystick. So now they've got a joystick and a Switch. Or if they had a joystick, maybe add two. So you can kind of progress it naturally as this person is getting more comfortable and getting to the point where you can even try taking off Copilot and letting them totally do something on their own. So that is a simple way to kind of get started and get familiar with somebody's ability to activate switches, different types of switches, and figure out what is a good position going to be for that switch and what type of switch is going to be helpful for them. All right, so we've got a few other resources here, and I believe you guys should get access to the slides after this. If not, when we go to the contact us page, feel free to shoot us an email and we will get these slides to you so you have all these links. But Able Gamers is a charity based in the United States that provides gaming assessments and trainings, and they collaborate with partners around the country. One thing that they do that's really special is they have grants that people can apply for to get access to gaming equipment. So adaptive gaming equipment. So once they know, okay, I'm going to need an Xbox adaptive controller and I'm going to need these types of switches, people can apply for those grants, and seems like they are pretty successful with being able to send that equipment out to folks. So that is a huge help because this stuff can get expensive for sure. Special Effect is another charity that's based in the UK, and they have some similar resources available. Gaming Readapted is a website that I use all the time. It has really good setup tutorials on how to actually set up this adaptive gaming equipment based on what tool you're using and what console or device you're using to game on. So I'm always looking that up to figure out, okay, how do I get the quad stick working on a Nintendo Switch? And this guy has a video for it. The Family Gaming Database can be helpful if you are looking for games to play and not really sure what options are out there, and maybe you're looking for games that are a little more wholesome themed, and maybe they've kind of curated a selection of games that are more like family appropriate, and having like the option to have a little more like intellectual kind of merit is what they say. And then Can I Play That is another one. They post in-depth accessibility reviews for games so that you can go on and say, okay, these are what my accessibility needs are. Will I be able to play this game? So that's very helpful. And then we would encourage you just to explore some of these other links, like the Library of Congress has a whole set of resources of links that you can explore, as well as what Microsoft and PlayStation have put out for their accessibility resources. And then last, so you might be wondering after this, there's a whole lot out there, and there definitely is. So how can we support you? So if you are in the state of Georgia, we would be more than happy to help you. Some of the primary things that we're doing are individualized gaming consultations. So you can reach out to us and we can talk through with you kind of what your needs are for gaming and maybe what types of setups might be the most useful. We also have, as Hunter mentioned, we've kind of grown our library a lot. So we're able to demonstrate a lot of these adaptive options, as well as loan things out to people to try on their own so that they can get about 6 weeks to really get a feel for if it's going to be useful for them before they commit to dropping all the money on a certain controller or system that may or may not work for them. And then we also are able to offer some assistance with navigating those funding options or connecting you with the Able Gamers charity if it's something that you want to explore. And we, are just kind of happy to help point you in other directions based on whatever your needs are. So There's also like some community groups for adaptive gaming that are really fun communities to be a part of, such as like Nerve Gaming and Ghost Gaming. So if it's connecting you with some peers that you can play games with, we'd be happy to do something like that as well. So that is about it, and we've got about 8 minutes for questions. If you want to put up the contact us slide maybe for a minute. And we can, I'm not sure if questions were coming in. I wasn't really looking at the chat. But yeah, we've got some of our contact information and socials are up here. Feel free to reach out. Hunter and I and the rest of the team at Tools for Life would be more than happy to assist y'all. And we appreciate you coming today. So
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any questions coming in right now. Oh, let me pull this back up. But if you guys would like, we would love to get your feedback on our webinar today. We do have a SurveyMonkey link right now on the screen, but I will be sending it out later this afternoon once we've concluded everything so that you can go straight to it. So we do value your feedback. We want to know what kind of topics you want to see, if the pace of the webinar that we delivered today was up to your standard, if you will. Again, we want to take this feedback to help our team improve in delivering our monthly webinars. And again, this will be sent out later today. But again, here's our contact information. You are welcome to get in touch with us anytime. We do have our social media handles as well. And we're pretty active on our social media. So please interact with us and share our content as well. We've still got a few minutes. If there are no questions coming in, Rachel and Hunter, is this it? Or are we good?
I guess we explained everything so well that nobody has any questions. Just perfect. No, but I'm always the type when somebody says any questions, nothing, and then 10 seconds later I'm like, oh, actually this. So
Right.
if anybody thinks of something afterward, please shoot us a message. Like I said, we're very happy to help. And thank you also to Tori for helping us set all of this up and to Sky for the captioning.
Thank you guys again for our survey. This will come out later this afternoon. The recording of our live broadcast, as well as the slides that we used today, will be available on our website, on our on our webinar archive page within the next week. If you requested continuing education credits, I will be sending out that access information within the next 2 weeks or so, just to ensure that everyone who wishes to access those is able to do so. And with that, I think we are all set, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.